The topic that has been assigned to me happens to be the literary research in Ayurveda, priorities, methodologies, and applicability. So this is a very important topic, particularly because the present scenario, situation of research demands exactly the same. So what I have done with this presentation is I have tried to divide the presentation into three regions, and therefore these will be the session of use. We will be talking about the background of research in the wake of present scenario, where we are, what has happened in the past, and what should be the way forward. And we will talk about the issues related to the literary research of unpublished work. We know there are manuscripts which are explored. So we will talk about the issues related to the manuscriptology, therefore. And after that, the last leg of presentation will be the scope and avenues of research on published literature of Ayurveda. We have a huge amount of literature like this, which also many hidden treasures which have been explored and brought back to the mainstream. So these will be the three objectives for this presentation. Going ahead, looking into the first objective, what is literary research? Because we know the fact that it's one of the type of research, and per se, all of you are in the field research, so therefore you know the fact that research is very important. Ramakrishna sir was also emphasizing on the fact research, however scientifically defined in different dimensions by the WHO and other agencies, it comes with one important aspect. It should come out something new. It should come, maybe it's a tool, maybe it's new knowledge, maybe it's a new medicine, maybe it's a new drug, maybe it's a new technology. If we find present for the world something new, and that's
Professor Anand,
of research.
Your voice is not clear. You can do one thing. You can switch off your video, please. Or I can do it from my side.
No,
yes.
What is research? Research has got, however, we have various definitions. All the definitions end up with two things. One, either we should find something new, or we should find newer application of something that is already there. For example, if there is a guduchi, which we say that it is rasayana, if I say convincingly that it is also used in Sandhigata Vata, so a newer application of something that is already known is also research. So in that background, when we look into what is literary research is also fitting into the very same definition, that is finding something with literary work. So within a literary work, like a Samhita, like published paper, like the Veda or any other literature, if we could bring out some hidden treasures and make it useful to the world, to the mind, then we call it. Now, what is the status of research in the field of Ayurveda, or rather with reference to biomedical research itself? On the screen, you are seeing two pictures. On one picture, there is a very good lorry which is moving on a highway, a very nicely built body with a wonderful road and a very equipped driver also. He is conducting a very smooth drive. Now, this is exactly the research that happens in the modern medical science. In the modern system, where the research methodology and the science is very current in nature, and therefore their research is very smooth. Whereas you can see on the other picture also, there is a lorry which is overloaded. there is a driver who is not completely skilled, and there is a lorry which is old, and there is a lorry which is running on not good road, and it has also need to be taken forward. This is literally the situation of present day as far as the clinical drug research is related to the Ayurveda. So what needs to be changed? We need to change the entire gamut of research. So let me look into some more details about the present scenario research itself. Now, what is present scenario of research? So we have this in the language of the computer science, we have something called as GIGO syndrome or RIGO syndrome. Note these. GIGO means garbage in, garbage out. RIRO means rubbish in, rubbish out. Now, if I look into the various researches that are being conducted, particularly the clinical researches, etc., when we look into the fact that there has been not a significant contribution of all these to increasing the wealth and the knowledge and the applicability of Ayurveda, this syndrome seems to be very much evident. Because when we know the fact that when we talk about Madhumeha, it is not that a drug will have an effect. That happens in the modern medical system. But for Ayurveda, we have a clear-cut line of treatment. Sthula Pramehi, Balavanika. So there are situations, and based on the situation, we have to plan our formulations. When I say I want to see the effect of drug A on disease A without understanding the intricacies of the Ayurveda, if we go on with doing this kind of research, I'm sure we are going to end up with this kind of syndrome itself, because our research question itself is incorrect. Because we know the fact that our science talks about the concepts like Purusham Viksha. We have to plan the research accordingly. And even when we see the Purusha, we show the fact that we have to see the patient's muhur aveksha is another criteria. So we have to see the changes. Muhur aveksha means we have to see the changes and do the modification accordingly. At the same time, we have to again talk about avastha vidhena chikitsa. So even after giving my 3 days of treatment, if there is ama, then I have to go for amapachana. So therefore, it is one drug, one disease strategy which is failing the Ayurveda. So GIGO, RIRO are typically the present scenario that we see, and therefore, unfortunately, we should also remember the fact that it is not only in Ayurveda, even the modern medical science also is in the wake of COVID-19, we have seen that they also did very same. So therefore, if you can see a picture on the screen, on the first set, you have data. Data here refers to the information or our research question, right? The data for them, the MS here, modern science. So for them, the data itself, the question itself, they have got a very robust and comprehensive and very perfect research methodology. The model is like a diamond, but the end result that got was the trash itself. Ivermectin went into trash, Remdesivir went into trash, the HCG went into trash. So that happened with modern medical science. Now we have, if you can see the second sequence of the picture, it is Ayurveda science. What we have wonderful research questions, we have wonderful probabilities, we have wonderful answers to the solutions. They are like diamond, they are very precious, but we don't have our own methodologies. We largely have to depend on the methodology of modern science. The methodology is not the ambit of modern science, but then we try to fit in to their shoes and follow the methods that they follow without modifying those methods to our needs, and therefore we follow those methods and we also end up with trash itself. So this has been the scenario when we look into the status of the Ayurveda, when we look into the various researches that have been conducted in various PG institutions and research institutions, which are there only in those libraries. Ideally, they should be in the public domain. Ideally, they should be in the form of a medicine, in the form of a policy, or in the form of a government program. They should have been by this time. But however, we see them as an ornament in the libraries itself. So in that sense, the contribution and the present scenario, particularly with reference to the clinical research and etc., have a high regard for clinicians. I'm not going to, not talking in any lighter sense, but I'm only looking at it and the present scenario. And that seems that we are creating a sort of herbal allopath and not the competent Ayurveda practitioners. So this also has got its own offshoot or its own growth. Particularly, we came up with something called as evidence-based medicine. And evidence-based medicine in the language of modern science is to be given evidence in the form of biochemistry or blood chemistry or the tissue changes, etc., the structural changes, etc., where all the Ayurveda researchers also went on doing the work in the same direction. Instead, they should have focused on Ayurveda-based evidence. They should have focused on creating an evidence for Amapachana. They should have thought of creating an evidence for Srotoshodhana. So that didn't happen. So we just became a follower of this evidence-based medicine in this present scenario. So looking at the present scenario is very dismal. And another thing, I don't know about what happened with the other universities, but I per se is connected to this Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, and I'm talking about the situation that was there probably around 6-7 years back. Literary research was discouraged. Literary research was discouraged because they had this apprehension that the researcher will just do the review of literature and present us. The researcher will just copy and paste something that was already published and present. And therefore, they discouraged conducting the literary researches. And therefore, we had some lean patch around 5 to 6 years where there was not much contribution, particularly in the field of literary research that happened. Maybe it was, the idea is, since it is a global idea, so maybe it was there in part of the also. So this is what is present. When we look into the literary research, and again, this is a picture from the which depicts the Prabhashani Adhyaya of Sushruta Samhita, where an ass of the dog is carrying out the sandalwood, and we are in the same place now. We are carrying our Samhitas like same. The Samhitas have got much information, and it is responsibility of you and me to bring it out. That is a blend of Ayurveda methodology with modern methodology. We should not compromise with the concepts of Ayurveda, but at the same time accept the methodologies and use the very same methodologies to validate our own science. Now, with reference to research, I have to bring this observation. The slide says why literary research is important in the scenario. This is an observation made by Ramharsh Singh in the paper published in the Annals of Ayurveda. The title was Ayurveda-based scientific methodology for research in Ayurveda. It runs like this. The Ayurvedic research has been categorized by CCRAS into 4 categories: visibly, literary research, conceptual research, clinical research, and drug research. The only component which may be claimed to be really successful and really useful and which has helped Ayurveda to become popular and flourish in academia is the literary research and literature development. All that is visible in Ayurveda today is from this. This is a one observation. And this observation has got its own backing, because if suppose we did not have Charaka Samhita, if suppose we did not had the commentary of Chakrapani Dattam Charaka, the people like Yadavji Tetumaji or Privash Sharmaji has not worked on the literature of Ayurveda, where we would be. In that sense, in the past, the contribution of literary research to the Ayurveda has to be acknowledged. But then, is that the end? No, that is just a beginning, and there is a long way to go forward. Now, since many of the researchers are coming up reading the research methodology book and to connect the things, talking about methodologies. So therefore, a connection is very much essential, and I will see this. This is research onion. This is developed by Saunders. He talks about how the concepts are connected in literary research, in research, and thereafter we try to figure out where the literary research lies. Outer layer of this onion is when we talk about research philosophies. Am I there?
It's cracking a bit, but it's audible.
Hearing, right?
So your voice is cracking a bit.
Okay. So this is the positioning of research. Outer layer of this research onion talks about the research philosophies, where we have terms positivism, realism, interpretivism, and pragmatism are there. Positivism means finding something new. Realism talks about identifying reality. Interpretivism talks about giving the evidences. And pragmatism is it should have the applicable value of application. And for this research philosophy, there are two approaches which are deductive and inductive. Deductive is a kind of approach where we talk about solving a problem, or rather with a reason by giving a drug and a disease like that. Whereas we have another approach known as inductive, where we talk about developing theory. And we should know the fact that the whole research is also classified as hypothesis testing research and hypothesis developing research. So we have research which will test the hypothesis in clinical research, drug research, etc. And we have kind of researches which are exploratory in nature and therefore the inductive. For these, then we have some strategies in the form of conducting an experiment, conducting some surveys, conducting case studies, action research, grounded theories, ethnography, and we will have some choices like single method, mixed method, or multi-method, which can be based on time horizons, can be cross-sectionals or longitudinal, and all they require data collection. This one, if I want to position the literary research, it comes as an archival type of research which is deductive in nature. So is research new? It is not at all new. However, Saunders, who came up with all these recent times, for us, this has been there right from the origin of Ayurveda. If we look into the shloka on screen, it says Brahma Smrutva Yosho Vedam Prajapatim Ajigrahat is a shloka which talks about Ayurveda Avatarana. You know the meaning of Ayurveda Avatarana. Now let me give you a different perspective of this. Now we know the Brahma, the knowledge source. Brahma means jnana. So here I'll try to represent it in a simple present day scenario. Brahma is a man who is having a wisdom, who had some information and he thought of it being useful to everyone. So what he did take it to Prajapati. Now Prajapati may be Indra, but if you look into the shloka, it says Prajapati is king. So so Brahma, who had an information, he wanted this medicine to be useful to everyone. So he said, went to the king and told, this is useful, you use it. So what should the king do? he has to verify it. So he has to do the merit and demerit analysis. He has to see whether it is useful or not. So therefore, there was merit demerit analysis in the form of So Ashwino. There are two people. So merit demerit analysis was done, and thereafter it was subjected to thousands of examinations, sahasraksha, and thereafter our concepts are developed. So therefore, research is evident very in the Ayurveda origin. Now, I'll not look into this ontology, the philosophical aspect. Now, these are some of the instances of literary research in Samhitas. We know how Charaka Samhita came into existence. We know how Sushruta Samhita came into existence. From Agnivesha Tantra, Charaka Samhita, where Dridabala added and completed the present version of Charaka Samhita. And with reference to Sushruta, Patashuddhi was done by Chandrata. So these are the instances, the examples of literary research in Samhitas. And Ashtanga Hridayakara directly says, Te bhyoti viprakirinebhyo prayo saratarottara. Both the Samhitas like Charaka and Sushruta where Viprakirana, the information was scattered. So I had to do literary research and present it in a new forum. That's why we have the Ashtanga Hridaya. And the gradual change of concepts, the inclusion of drugs, the inclusion of diseases, food articles was very much evident in Samhitas, which is substantial amount of information to justify that literary research was prevalent in ancient India or ancient Ayurveda also. Now, was it just a random type of work? No. It was a very systematic type of work. However, I have to acknowledge Dr. Shanezer, who always emphasized on this aspect. Now, I am talking about giving you an example of the discussion that happens in Atreya Bhadrakapya Adhyaya on number of rasas. Look at this very same problem with the research perspective. There is a problem. What is the problem? Rasa Sankhya is the problem. Why it is needed? There is a need for the study. So we have to identify the different stakeholders of Darshana who are telling us the different numbers. So we have to enumerate and present the status. So different scholars were assembled in one point and to have a discussion. And the methodology was the invited people were asked to present, and who were invited? The invited people were the experts in that subject and were randomly. They're not the friends of Atreya. He did not collect anyone that he knew. He selected only those who were qualifying. It was a random selection. It was a non-biased approach. And they were asked to present their views. The data was presented in a seminar. The analysis of the data was done by Atreya, and the conclusions were given by Atreya by including and inclusive method as well as excluded the other opinions. And the discussions were noted down, and Atreya summarized the whole proceedings, and the whole proceedings got itself translated into an Adhyaya in Charaka Samhita. So if you look into this situation itself, we have an ample example of research in the Ayurveda. Likewise, we have the examples. I'll skip these slides and go to the second part of our presentation, which is going to be on the unpublished work of work related to the literature. The literary research can be of two kinds. One is on unpublished informations, and the other one is on published informations. Now, what are the unpublished literature? Now, this Hasta Likhita Shastra or Pandulipi Vijnana. Now, these are rather in English, it's otherwise known as manuscriptology. Now, what is a manuscript? Manuscript, as defined by the Indian Antiques and Treasures Act of 1972, manuscript is a handwritten composition on a paper or a bark or a cloth or a metal or a palm leaf or any other material dating back at least 75 years, and that has got significant scientific, historical, and aesthetic value. So manuscripts are these handwritten composition which are predominantly available in the form of palm leaf, the Tadapatra or Bhurjapatra, which should be technically, legally, to term something as a manuscript, it should have been at least 75 years old, and it should be unpublished, and it should be in the form of manuscript itself. If that happens, we call that study as a manuscript. Now, the study is having three technical terms on your screen, and we talk about manuscriptology, handling and studying the manuscript. If we talk about the date, the genealogy, and when the manuscript was written, etc., we call that as paleography. And there is another term called as codicology, which is the study of codices. And this happened in particularly the Latin America, where unlike the Indian subcontinent, where the documentation were done on leaves, we have examples of they being done on the leathers, particularly the skin of dead animal. So they were called as vallas, and the study of them is known as codicology. So this is the Hastalikhita Shastra or Pandulipi Vijnana. Now, the manuscripts are also many in number. So these writings deals with a wide range of subjects like Veda, Vedanga, Darshana, Ayurveda, Yoga, mathematics, linguistics, and many manuscripts are there. So with reference to Ayurveda, though they can be classified as medical manuscripts, those which are related to Ayurveda and yoga also, and non-medical, so which are actually the other manuscripts, Veda, Vedanga, Darshana, etc., which also will have the information related to Ayurveda. So we can have these two as a division of the manuscripts, as those related to medical manuscripts or non-medical manuscripts. Now, what are the current trends? The current trends, I'll quickly bring 3 or 4 research works that have been conducted very recently. On screen, you can see one work is known as Ashwini Samhita, a critical edition of manuscript with English translation. It was done in Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. It's a Samhita titled as Ashwini Samhita, which is there in old Kannada, Halagannada we call it as, and it was procured from a place called as Shravanabelagola in Karnataka itself. And it was researched to explore, analyze, interpret the subject matter of Ashwini Samhita, to review the contributions of Ashwini Samhita. This was one research work that was conducted around 3 years back. Here you have one work I'm presenting before you, a manuscript on Vaidya Shastra Deepika. Now, this is a work that was conducted when I was back in before I came to Bangalore Ayurveda College. I was faculty at Mysore Ayurveda College. So that Dr. Santosh Kumar happens to be my own student. He did this manuscript work. It was a 79 folio manuscript. The original content was in Sanskrit, and the margins had got the information available in Telugu language, which talked about the various aspects of Hetu and Linga of many diseases, and the technical information related to the clinical examination was available in this manuscript. Now, here is another unique manuscript. This is a work on Kashyapa Samhita. And importance of this is, we know Kashyapa Samhita, we have read Kashyapa Samhita, but this is not that Kashyapa Samhita. However, even though the title of the manuscript says Kashyapa Samhita, it is not the Kashyapa Samhita that we know it. So this was a manuscript that was procured and was worked. And one of the researcher happens to be a very close friend of mine. So he was emphasizing on Daiva Vyapashaya Chikitsa from this unpublished manuscript called as Kashyapa Samhita. It was procured from Sampurnananda Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya from Varanasi, and the sources, these are available, the copies are available in other repositories also. This is one more work. This was done on Vaidya Jivana. We know Vaidya Jivana of Lolimba Raja for the famous quotation, Patte Sati Gadarthasya Kimoshada Nishevanam, etc. So there is a commentary available on it known as Gudartha Deepika by Harinath Goswami, and it was subjected to critical edition. So what is critical edition? I'll soon come to that. And this is one more literary research. It was manuscript is titled as Arsha Chikitsa, very small manuscript, which was sourced from the Oriental, it was Scindia Institute from Madhya Pradesh. That was the source of this manuscript, where the emphasis of takra, etc., was available and evident on working on this manuscript. Okay. So those are some of the examples of manuscripts, manuscriptology that we have as far as current trends are concerned. Now, what really is manuscriptology? Manuscriptology is a science that processes the manuscripts. Manuscripts, we already learned, are the works written on palm leaf or birch bark, talapatra or bhurjapatra, or even sanchipat, that is the aguru aquilaria agalocha is also used in making manuscripts. So it's a science that processes these manuscripts. What is processing? It is the act of collecting, cataloging, and editing the manuscript. Now, let me briefly tell you what are these. Collection means we collect the manuscripts from the various sources, and the sources are either in some old temples or Asiatic societies or libraries, or some private persons are also holding the manuscript still. So we collect them. We read the first and the last folio of the manuscript. The pages are not called as pages, they are called as folios. That's the difference between a page and a folio. So we read first, so there will be a beginning of this. We have a colophon, like an introductory note. And the last one will have some information, just like how in the Charaka Samhita, each adhyaya comes up with Agnivesha Krate Tantre, Charaka Pratisamskrite, Dridhal Bala Purite, like that. The last colophon will be taken, and based on this, the catalog will be prepared. So cataloging is accounting of the manuscript material with various types of material, which is related to the physical nature as well as intellectual nature. So physical nature, how many pages, how many folios are there, what is the size of the folio, how many letters are there in each line, how many line of information is there. Such kind of information is known as physical information. Whereas intellectual information, we talk about the content proper, who is the author, who is the scribe, who is the commentator if there are. So that kind of information is type of information. So that is available in the form of catalog. Then once this collection and cataloging is done, then we talk about editing. Editing involves the process that makes the manuscript published. So manuscript need to be published, and that's so that it is useful for the larger people. And that process is called as editing. Now, one has to remember the fact that most of the manuscripts are already collected and the repositories are available. The part of collection cataloging is by and large over. So what is left to be done is editing. So editing of manuscript is what we effectively mean when we talk about manuscriptology in the present scenario. Now, when we talk about India, India is the largest wealth source of manuscripts. As per this research coming out from the Department of Culture, Government of India, there are more than 5 million manuscripts. 5 million manuscripts, 50 lakh manuscripts are there in India, of which there are Sanskrit manuscripts are 67%. Other Indian languages are 25%, and there are foreign languages like the Arabic, Persian, and the Tibetan. Of course, I cannot say them as foreign now, which are 8%. And for this itself, the Government of India established an autonomous body called as National Mission on Manuscripts, and they have the list of all the repositories. There are 33 repositories present in India throughout, spread across, which hold the manuscripts. And this repository they titled as Kriti Sampada. If anyone wants to visit, they have to go to the website namami.org, which is talking about which is a website of National Mission Manuscripts. And what is heartening to see among all these is, among all these manuscripts, only 2% of this is published. Only 2% of the manuscript is published, and 98% of the manuscript is still in the search of its publication. So this is a data that was in 90. Maybe that percent could have been increased by 1 or 2%, but certainly it is not more than 4% that has come into the public domain. So the scope of manuscriptology is just too vast. Anyone who wants to take a work on manuscript has got a lot of scope to be done. Now, I talked about the various repositories. The various sources are there. One among them happens to be the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune, which, as per the government catalog of manuscripts, they talk about 321 manuscripts that are related to Ayurveda. You can just see the number of the association that you can link with them. Around 10 are related to Samhita, 16 of Roganidhana, 19 related to Dravyaguna and plants, 23 are related to Vyadhis, 120 are related to Chikitsa aspect, 87 related to Rasa and the Kalpas, and 67 are the compilatory works like Vaidya Jivana, Vaidya Prabha, etc. Chikitsa, Kalika is also there. So this is an example. Like that, we have Rajasthan Oriental Research of Institute, the Oriental Research of Institute in Mysuru. So there are many repositories, many sources for you to get the manuscripts. Now, how to publish a manuscript? To publish a manuscript, it needs to be edited. What needs to be done in the process of editing is we have to take the manuscript. Remember, if you are very new to this manuscriptology, no manuscript will be handed over to you physically. You will get a good quality image of those manuscripts. A microfilm of the manuscript is what you can get it. And from that, you need to, first thing that you need to do is transcribe it. Notice transcription. Now, we know the fact that the language and the script are two different things. I am speaking in English, I may write the whole content in Hindi also. Likewise, it happened with our own manuscripts. And we should know the fact that many Sanskrit manuscripts, Sanskrit per se now also doesn't have its own script. It is dependent on Devanagari. So all that is in Sanskrit has to be written in Devanagari is what is present day order. Likewise, we have manuscripts which are in Sanskrit but written in Kannada, available in Oriental Research Institute in Mysore. We have manuscripts which are in other, for example, we have manuscripts written in Devanagari, we have manuscripts written in Nandinagari, we have manuscripts written in Grantha language, Grantha script, rather, it's a Tamilian version, right? So there is a difference between language and script. So if you have a manuscript which is there in one language, you have to convert it into the same script. So that is transcription. Now, once the transcription is done, then you need to do the collation. Collation means, is this the only manuscript that is available on this with this title? So for that, you have to talk to all the repositories and ask if they have this manuscript. If they have, get the copy and see all the manuscripts and test which is the most authentic. It involves your application, mind, presence of knowledge, everything. So you have to, if there are 10 manuscripts on the same title, you have to see which of those is very nearer to the original author. So that part is known as collation. After this, you will edit it. And editing can be of two kinds. One is diplomatic and the other one is critical. Notice diplomatic. Diplomatic edition is that kind of edition where you keep the original and give the translation for that original work. Many of our Samhitas are belonging to this category. The original Sanskrit is also there. After that, the English translation is provided. If only that amount of edition is done, that is known as diplomatic edition. If we are doing something extra, you are analyzing the content, the subject, as well as the life or the works related to the same field at the same time, or the present scenario, we talk it as critical edition. So diplomatic edition is very simple. You just take the shloka, give the translation, and that's the end of it. That kind of publication are known as diplomatic edition. Critical edition is many manuscripts are collected, they are collated, they are compared, and interrelation is established. And the best possible reading is selected, and then the edition is prepared. So if this whole is happening, we call it as critical edition. This is the difference between the critical edition and the diplomatic edition. And this critical edition also will be coming into two divisions as lower criticism and higher criticism. But since want of the time, I'll skip those aspects. Why we should publish the manuscripts is the most important thing. They are living books. Just see, they are the kind of books that are not attended. See, the author, the researcher of the past wanted something to convey to the future generation. He has this craving to transfer this information to the future. That's why he has written it. And we have not got the message that he wanted to convey. And therefore, they are living books. And they contain the treasure wisdom that has come down to the people in the form of manuscript. And we need to discover the hidden treasures, because we know our past was very glorious. We know we had wonderful revelations that have been done in the past. So therefore, that all makes, be it not just medical science. See, if you look into any architecture of any of Indian temples, modern day architecture also failed to make such wonderful contributions. So such has been the legacy, and therefore, if they wanted to write, there will be certainly some important information that they wanted to convey, and that's why they have written it. Because writing, particularly in that period, was not an easy task at all. So preparing, even when we talk about manuscript, I am using the word writing, but many of the palm leaf are not written, they are inscribed. Inscribed means they take the stylus and make permanent marks on those leaves, and then they paste the color so that they become readable. This inscription was because of the two reasons. Primarily in the ancient past, there was not ink. Even after the procuring of the ink, the people encourage inscription because the later people could not do any manipulations. If the ink is there, anyone can erase it. So if it is inscribed, then no one can erase it. That is the logic of inscription. And they have taken so much of pain, so much of time, so much of money, so much of energy has been spent only for the purpose that this information has to be passed on to the next generation. If we don't make use of that information, then there will be no one bigger fool than us. So therefore, it is the obligation and the duty of everyone who is a part of this Indian subcontinent to encourage the researches on manuscripts. So just look, I mean, I have heard people saying, if you look into the life of someone who creates a manuscript, the tears come to our eyes. So much of hardship they have gone through, and after going through those hardship, they have given us some sort of manuscript. If I spend 1 month of my life to read that manuscript, it's not a big deal at all. So therefore, the intention, the desire, the concern, and the love of our ancestors towards mankind has to be given the due respect, and therefore we should conduct the researches on the manuscripts. And if you do the researches on manuscript, what you can find? You can find new topics, new concepts, new principles. New means new to us, right? There may be new thing that is until now not known. So that is a possibility that we can get from the manuscripts. So for a good manuscript, you need to have a good study on manuscript. You have to have a good knowledge about the Ayurveda. Sanskrit is very essential. Familiarity with the script is essential. We should know the Tantra Yukti, the Pada Jnana, the Padartha Jnana, the Vakyartha Jnana Hetu, etc. And we should have good access to the kosha, so that whenever any new words, we should approach to the Shabda koshas like Amara kosha, etc. and get the meaning. And the difficulties and challenges are there. These are the two important resources that I want to emphasize for the future readers of manuscriptology. The basics of manuscriptology and the introduction to the manuscriptology. Anyway, Chaudhary sir has requested to share the slides. I'll be doing it. Now, just remember, these are the three books that we have: Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and Ashtanga Hridaya. For the Acharya Trikamaji, Yadavji Trikamaji Acharya to write Charaka Samhita, he took the help of 14 manuscripts. He meticulously read, analyzed, did the critical edition and of all the 14 manuscripts, and ended up with the present version of Charaka Samhita. For him to do with the Sushruta Samhita, it took one more. That is, the manuscripts that are involved in present day Sushruta Samhita are 15, and Yadavaji Trikamaji Acharya along with Narayan Ram Acharya presented us the Sushruta Samhita of Sushruta with Dalhana and Dalhana commentary, and also that of Gayadas. Now the same, when we look into the Ashtanga Hridaya, this person by name Hari Sadashiva Shastri Paradhakar did research on 33 manuscripts. He could find the manuscripts from different countries also. He procured the 33 manuscripts and did an extensive survey on these two commentaries along with the original source, and that's why we have the Ashtanga Hridaya right now. Now, if I tell you, we have one Charaka Samhita and we have thousands of books written on Charaka Samhita. We have one Sushruta Samhita, we have thousands of books written on Sushruta Samhita. If we have one Ashtanga Hridaya, thousands of books written on Ashtanga Hridaya. If we have one more like this, say for example, the original version of something called as Kharanada Samhita, or any other who were the classmates of the Agnivesha, or the Sushruta Dhanvantara Sampradaya, if we have one more, just imagine what could be the wealth of information that I could have as an Ayurveda scholar. So therefore, there is a possibility. There is certainly a possibility, since 98% of manuscripts are still not published. They are there in the repositories outside India also. They've been stolen and taken away by the invaders. And therefore, there is a scope of finding a wealth again. So therefore, what is needed is diving deep into the manuscriptology itself. So if we do research on manuscript, so it's like growing this tree which has got so many fruits, and each fruit will have seed, and from each seed there will be a new plant that will be growing. So new plant growing means newer contribution to the Ayurveda. That's how the manuscriptology will help for the growth and research of other branches of Ayurveda, and that allows, that mandates either publish or perish, or rather do work on manuscripts, publish, and help for the prosperity of Ayurveda. So with this, I ended the second component of my presentation, that was research on the current areas of research, as well as the scope and the possibilities of manuscriptology. Now, I will, in next 10 minutes, I think I'm allowed to use the 10 minutes or so. I will quickly run through the possible literature, researches on the areas of published works. Maybe it is Samhitas, maybe it is Lagutrayi, Brahatrayi, the various commentaries. What can be possible? What can be done? Now, what are the current trends? The current trends are basically on revalidation. Now, we whenever you look into any synopsis, we have this habit of asking question, what is the reference for this trial? What is the reference for this drug? What is the reference for this karma? So therefore, we have references and it is not wrong, because Acharya Vagbhata says, Yuganurupa Sandarbho Vibhagena Karishyate. We have to renew the things, we have to make it useful in the present scenario, and that's why all that is pretty much fair and acceptable. Even Acharya Charaka says, Samskarta Kurute Tantram Puranam Cha Punarnamam. We have to renew the things, and this is coming from Charaka Samhita Siddhisthana 12th chapter. So therefore, the current trends are basically revalidation. I'll give some examples of revalidation, and then we'll talk about the future avenues of the literary research. Okay. So methodology is something that is pretty same and common. No need to stress much. It's basically a collection of references, arranging all them in chronological or any other logical order. Accept and reject the references after critical study, and analyze and interpret and publish. So it's basically read, think, analyze, and write type of research. That's the methodology of the literary research. The purpose of literary research is, there are some things that I want to emphasize. We talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat. We want to be Atmanirbhara in the field of Ayurveda also. We have to be self-reliant. We have to develop a self-reliant Ayurveda, particularly in the field of research. It's harmful for us to wear the shoes of modern research, and therefore we should have our own research methodology. And to make our own research methodology, I have to come to my own literature. I have to dive deep into my own samhitas. So we have another purpose: to regain the lost or the past glory, and to keep in pace with the current developments. We cannot be obsolete or outdated. So we have to be updated and keep in pace with the current developments, and to avoid intellectual invasion on Ayurveda by foreigners. This is very important, because we have had some path-breaking scientific developments where it is very possible that those who have learned modern science, those who are outside the India, will come and start working and showing that this is how the Ayurveda is to be studied. They will do it. In fact, while reading, I could not find that article for this presentation. There was an article wherein an Indian scientist itself proposed government of India to publish, or rather give the work related to manuscripts to the outsiders who are more dedicated and committed than the Indians. This was an observation that was made. So if we neglect, certainly it will be taken out, because a whole Ayurveda is in the public domain. Everyone and anyone can access it and take it forward. So wherein, what is the harm that can be seen? They will blend it in a different way. That's the concern that I have to mention. So that's why I have used the word. We had in the past the invasions that has done by the Britishers, or even before the invasions have happened. But this will be a new type of invasion, an intellectual invasion on the Ayurveda is possible. To avert that, we have to do literature research in the Ayurveda. So few things. I'll just give you some few examples, and thereafter we'll call off this. First thing is, we talk about incidence rate. Any problem?
No, sir, it's fine right now.
Shall I continue, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's no issue.
Fine. I'm hearing some other voices. That's why I asked you. So we know we do so many clinical researches, and for all our clinical researches, to calculate the sample size, we need this data. And if I want to work on Madhumeha, I have to give the incidence rate of diabetes. If I want to work on Sthaulya, I have to give the incidence rate of obesity. For all these things, we don't have incidence rate at all. Now, is it very difficult for us to find the incidence rate? No, it is not, because we all are working in one or the other institutions, and those institutions are flooded with the lifestyle disease, patients of lifestyle diseases itself. So therefore, start collecting this information, the incidence of that disease in that area itself. If we go retrospectively, if you can pull up the information related to the past 5 years, you have substantial data where we can come up with the incidence. So when a researcher, when a statistician asks me, what is the incidence rate of Staulia, I will be giving the incidence rate of Staulia itself and not that of obesity. So this is a part of a literary research where you have to see the case reports, see the data of your own OPD, and see what was the diagnosis and what was the incidence rate. As simple as that. So it falls in the ambit of literary research, and it can help me do a very good research with a very good sample size in the field of Ayurveda, where I will be talking about the sample size in the language of Ayurveda. I'm not talking about the diseases. I'm not talking about paralysis. I'm not talking about the dyslipidemia. I can talk about that of Dhamani Pratyachaya. I can talk about Abadha Medas itself. So that is a possibility that, where we can make Atmanirbhar Ayurveda as far as the research is concerned. And this is another important aspect, the protocol development. Now we have a very shortfall in this field. We have information in Samhita, and which is seen in the clinical setup in our OPDs and IPDs. However, the link between what Samhita says and what the patient is presenting has to be established through these protocol developments. So we have to have a protocol development which may be based on Nidana Panchaka, which will be based on disease-wise protocol development is also possibility, because we know that there is a disease which is there in Madhava Nidhana and the patient is coming. So exact matching of that should happen through our protocol. So protocol for assessment of dosha, protocol for assessment of hetu is again a literary work. And here also I have to emphasize that the hetus have changed dramatically. The hetus that our Samhitas talk about are not only the hetus that we see in present day. There is a new set of hetus that are observed. We have to analyze and prepare the protocols for the assessment of hetus. We can prepare the protocols which are therapeutic in nature, even the assessment protocols also. This is the want of the day. Every clinician, if they want to have a smoother ride on a good lorry, then as a literary researcher, it is my obligation, it is my duty to give him the robust protocols for his research to be conducted. It is not that this is not at all work, but the work that is being done are very minimal. So many times it doesn't require much of our application. See this, I'm giving you an example of this Kuppuswami's scale. Now, I suppose many of you would have done clinical researches. And in clinical researches, we take the demographic data of the patient. And in the demographic data, we mention what is the socio-economic status of the patient. And what is the scale that we depend on? We depend on Kuppuswami's socio-economic scale. Based on this, we either place him in upper socio-economic class or upper middle or lower middle, lower, right? Now, is it very complicated or robust, or rather a big work to do? Now, for the first time when he has done it, maybe he has taken some time and pain, but the later revisions are just a modification of what was done. So it is as simple as that. Like that also, we can have some scales for assessment of Ama, for assessment of Swasthalakshana, for assessment of Vyadhi Mukti of particular disease. So such scales is what we want, and we have some examples like this. For example, this is done and published also, where we talk about self-assessment tool to estimate Agni Bala. Particularly, it is related to digestive strength itself. So here is a questionnaire that they developed, And based on this, the Agni Bala is being assessed. And likewise, the development and validation of a scale of concept of well-being with Sukhayu and Hitayu is under process. Assessment of Ama and Amavata. Such tools, if we develop and if they are developed, validated and accepted, then they serve as a wonderful tool for any clinician to conduct a very good clinical research on the research methodology of Ayurveda. So now next one I'm bringing about is, this is an article which talks about the history of discovery of blood circulation, unrecognized contribution of Ayurveda masters. Now, you know, when we learn in our high school blood circulation, when we learn, we assign this ownership to Harvey. William Harvey is the one who enlightened the whole world about the blood circulation. Did we Ayurveda followers of the practitioners didn't know the blood circulation before that? No, our own Sushruta Samhita talks very clearly about the blood circulation. So here is an article where the researcher conducts a literary research on Ayurveda Samhitas and presents to the scientific world the way how Ayurveda had seen the circulation much before William Harvey could see it. And therefore, even though the credit is given to the Harvey and not to our own Sushruta or Charaka, where Sushruta talks about Shabdarchir Jala Santanavat, where he talks about all the three directions of flow, and where Acharya Charaka gives the importance to Vyana. So even though such novel things are there, the credit is taken by others. So does this not instigate us to conduct researches on such topics? Now, this should be taken as a trigger point to conduct many researches wherein we can bring about just a minute. Okay, we can bring about this. You can see the slides now. They are slightly misarranged. So the medical history of diseases. So I can bring to the scientific world that diabetes is not the diabetes that you talk about the origin in the 18th century or like that. It is a diabetes which which existed in the pre-Vedic period also. Right from the Haviprasha, the diabetes has the Prameha has started. So I can rewrite the whole medical history of all the diseases if that is taken as a challenge. It is applicable not only to the diseases but also to the various body components. Say, for example, lipid. If you look into the lipid history, it started somewhere in the 17th century. But if you look at the very same in our Samhitas, forget about the lipid history. We have atherosclerosis documented in the Dhamani Pratichayas Nanatmaja Vyadhis, and we have obesity also documented in the period when Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga time, particularly in Janapada Samsvamani Adhyaya of Charaka Samhita. So we're talking about Baddha Meda and Abadha Meda, circulating fat, the stable fat, everything is documented. Still, we don't find ourselves mentioned when we talk about these type of histories. It should pain us, it should trigger us to have a detailed study on the history of all these diseases, history of all these body components, and present before the scientific world the more correct and apt history, which will rather will be a step in bringing the lost glory to the Ayurveda. The same is applicable to medicinal plants. So we can think there are many things that can be done in the field of literary research in Ayurveda. We can talk about profiling of the diseases. We have to understand that the Sannipata Jwara is not yet profiled. We have to understand that the Masurika, Romantika or Vishama Jwara, still they're not profiled. What I mean by profiling is how it is there in Samhitas, what are the clinical presentations of that. The patients come, the patient presentation and the Samhita presentation has to be linked, and we call that as profiling. So there will be a Sannipata Jwara, which will be seen in with 3 or 4 different presentations. So it is our duty to do the profiling, and this all is based on a literature research itself. So critical profiling of all possible presentations is what is needed. Profiling of new diseases also, because Anagata Badha, or rather the diseases which are not mentioned in Samhitas also need to be worked on, because the new diseases will be coming. We cannot say that I will not work on that. Particularly the diseases like COVID-19, we have Hetu, we have Linga, and we should be in a position to profile this disease. We should be in a position to systematic sclerosis or attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome, PCOD, the motion sickness. There are n number of diseases which are wanting for us. They have Hetu, which I have to thank the modern researchers also, because they have identified the trigger factor. They have identified the positive factors. I should make use of them. The presentation is also there. So what is needed is I have to establish understand those diseases from the perspective of dosha, dhatu, srotas, agni, and prepare a profile so that we can come up with intervention of the therapies for all those things. So while reading my biodata, she mentioned about a patent. So patent I got when I was working in Mysuru, Government Ayurveda Medical College, Mysuru, where I had the privilege of working with the Defense Food Research Lab in Mysuru, which is an organization of Ministry of Defense, DRDO, where they were working on on seasickness, and that gave me an opportunity to work along with them. And we could see what I did is I was associated with applied nutrition department of the DFRL. So they deal with the foods. And I have one food substance, Badara, which is mentioned in Chardi Nigrahana Mahakashaya of Charaka Samhita. And in motion sickness, we see one symptom is Chardi. So I took this. So we, in fact, went on and conducted clinical research also. So based on modern tools itself, a rotator method was a method of inducing motion sickness in those who were vulnerable was done. We generated. However, the results was not conclusively very efficacious, but there were positive trends. And the people in the DFRL went on and they said, even in the people working in the Navy are also people like you and me, and they also eat the very same chocolate, peppermint, like the junk that everyone takes. So the researcher there wanted, I will replace the junk food with a functional food, and he prepared a jujuba based leather. That is the badara, pulp of badara is converted into a small layer which dissolves as soon as it is kept on tongue. And we prepared this leather, and that leather got patented. That was what she mentioned. So here we could see that it's disease profiling to some extent was also done, where we could see that it is an asatmi indriyartha sanyoga that is happening. After that, because of this, because what the message the brain is getting from the eye is different, from the ear is different. Ear is the organ that is meant for equilibrium, and this mismatch is yielding to a sort of prajnaparada is yielding to this presentation. So that's such kind of activities are to be taken, such kind of, if you look into the modern medical books, the diseases are countless. And we need to do the profiling of all those diseases. Such a big and humongous and the most voluminous work is pending. So that has to be done. So what I will do is even the COVID-19. See, the present day COVID-19 is we have so many vascular interventions, and we know the fact that Jwara is going to lead to Raktapitta, right? Jarasantapavad Raktapitta Mudhiryate. Raktapitta presentation is there in COVID-19. So such things are there which we have to bring it out, present it to the scientific world. So How much time do I have?
Sir,
How many slides are still to come?
Sir, they are probably.
Or how much time you need actually?
I may need another 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, you can continue, please.
Okay, sir. So, okay, when we talk about the literary research, we can work on unexplored commentaries. For example, the commentaries on Sharangara Samhita are not yet researched fully. And there are sthana, adhyaya, particularly the Indriya sthana is that sthana which has been not explored at all, right? So such are the opportunities for us. And when we talk about any of those works, we have to remember these three things. We have to see the work from the author perspective, from the subject perspective, from the reader's perspective. Reader's perspective, I have not got to tell because everyone will be reading and getting the meaning. So what could have been the intention of author is to be understood. The subject and the content has to be understood, and we have to place it, see it contextually from that time. So the time, the kala, be it in the 12th century, the 13th century, we have to view it from that angle also. These are some of the important key aspects as far as researches on commentaries, etc. are concerned. Now, I want to mention about the possible researches in the field of darshana. We know there is one wonderful book available in Hindi itself, published by, authored by Dr. Jyotirmitra Acharya, which talks about the philosophical material in Brihatrayi. So in the Brihatrayi, what is the philosophical material that is there? He has done a research and published it in the form of a book. Now, basing on this itself, there is one research work that is being conducted here in Karnataka, where we talk about the philosophical material in, it should, there is a typing error, philosophical material in Bhela Samhita. So Bhela Samhita, though available partly, because it was also a work which was commenced at the time of Agnivesha Samhita itself, Agnivesha Tantra itself. So it should also contain some information related to the Indian philosophies. So an exploratory research for the philosophical material on Bhela Samhita is under progress. Likewise, it can be extended to the other Samhitas. Do we have that work done on Kashyapa Samhita? Do we have worked it on Harita Samhita? However, Harita Samhita is available. There is a controversy whether it should be accepted as an original Harita Samhita or not is also existing. But whatever, we have the scope of exploring from this angle also, what is the philosophical material that can be traced out in these Samhitas or the later Samhitas also. So when we talk about critical analysis, these all are possibilities. We can do critical analysis of a one word, pada, in a samhita, one vakya in a samhita, one sutra in a samhita, or one prakarana in a samhita, or it can be extended to one adhyaya, one sthana, or it can be a comparison of one adhyaya to the other adhyaya. We can work on, there can be more than 150 dissertations on Agriya of Charaka Samhita. We can work on srotas. We can, the future of the health is going to be food. So we have so much of information related to Ahara Varga in the Annapana Chatushka of Charaka Samhita. So critical analysis of all these is wanting. So you will be surprised to see what that parrot is doing on the screen. So just wanted to mention when Dridabala talked about compiling and adding 41 adhyayas to the existing 120 chapter Charaka Samhita, what he did is he did follow something called as Uncha Shilocha Vidhi. So what he did is he, just like how parrot collects only the grains that are good and that it can eat, likewise only the good and relevant information only was compiled by Dridabala and added to the Charaka Samhita to give us a 120 chapter Charaka Samhita. This is Chakrapani's commentary I'm quoting. So which is serving us as a tool, as a method how we should go as far as critical analysis is concerned. This is another example. So just this is a work that is under process in Indriya Sthana. I forget about the primary objectives. Look at the secondary objectives. What is the specialities? This work is trying to explore the Indriya Sthana in relation to the medical ethics. Ethics is a very recent onset, particularly for the modern medical scientists. ICMR ethical guidelines are very new. But however, for us, they are from the time before Christ, to explore, segregate the concepts related to human anatomy, because Indriya Sthana talks about the Indriya, Indriya Adhisthana. We have the anatomical structures of eye, nose, etc. mentioned there. To comprehend the Arishta Lakshanas in the light of modern medical knowledge wherever possible, to segregate Arishta Lakshanas related to Swabhavika and Akala Mrityu, right? This is another thing. Death is a normal phenomenon, Swabhavika Vyadhi. And Acharya Charaka says, whatever be the death, it will have to be after the Arishta Lakshana itself. So that allows us to see and segregate, if possible, what are the Arishta Lakshanas that can be seen during that period, and to develop research strategies on Arishta Vijnana. So what can be the possible researches? So these are some of the objectives of this kind of work. Okay, retrospective literary study is also possible. If there is a famous Vaidya who has treated hundreds and thousands of patients, he would have kept some notes of Vaidyas, his prescription pattern, peculiar findings and observations that can serve as a topic for research, called as retrospective literary studies. Now, I will bring you to another domain, an important domain, which is in keeping with the pace of the present day time. We know when I was doing my PG, searching one reference in Charaka Samhita was a daunting task. I had to read the whole Samhita for one word. Now the CCRAS has done wonderful work. They have brought about the e-Samhitas that allows me, if I type something, all the references of that Samhita pop on the screen. So that should serve as a trigger for easing the search options for our future researchers and the students. So you can take lead from that as making some softwares. It will be an interdisciplinary work. We need to work with an engineer with that for that matter. You can develop some softwares or some mobile applications, or rather the e-Samhita of those Samhitas which are not yet done by them. E-books can be converted, a small databases. And there is one more important thing. The Ministry of Ayush through CDAC Pune is encouraging such activities, and every year they conduct some training programs for those who are interested, and they call for notification and they give training for how to develop apps. So that can be used. We have this also as a possible avenue for conducting researches. So on screen you can see one more app. That was this app is Dashemani of Charaka, which is a simple app which is done by my own student, Dr. Dhanush, who was there, was my UG student when he was doing his UG in Mysuru. So then we talk about something called as we have this Mani Pravadam is a book, Ayurveda book available in Malayalam. It talks about using cow's urine for the Khalitya. And now, based on this, there was a research work and published. So it has got a very good result. The title of the work I have shown on screen. If you want, anytime I will share the article also. So which allows us that we have in our Samhitas various animal source of medicines. The profiling of all those has to happen. It is also in need. However, we have one work done in the past, the glossary of medicinal plants in Charaka Samhita. To that extent, all medicinal plants have been listed. Is it not our duty to do the same work with reference to the animal origin for their enlisted medical health benefits? So it is also falls in the ambit of the literary research. However, zoo pharmacognosy is also there, and we have such some references where we give some medicines or herbs to the animals, and we make use of the milk of them, the milk of them particularly, we can have literary profiling of all those kind of substances. I'll skip this. I'll skip this. I'll skip this. Okay, teaching learning method is another thing, particularly after Bloom, but in 1856 probably, he gave us a classification of education in the form of cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain. I suppose many of those who are in teaching would have been exposed to these kind of words. So, whereas if we look into our Upanishads, the very same are there in the form of Adipi, Bodha, Acharana, Pracharana. So therefore, the teaching learning methods that are embedded in Ayurveda are also new, not new. However, we talk about the new ways of teaching. There is something called as problem-based learning, small group activities. If you carefully look into the Samhitas, you will find all these in our own Samhitas. So that can be a wonderful act of research. See, I will have these two slides at the end. We can think of finding the Krimi, the Kita, the Rakshasa, Bhuta. So we can develop microbiology or virology in the Ayurveda. We have agriculture leads in Ayurveda, the medical ethics, the physics in Ayurveda. Geography is, geography is Ayurveda, in Ayurveda literature. If you look into only the Jalavarga of Ashtanga Hridaya, you have so many info. There is a reference of Brahmaputra river, there is a reference of Konkan region, there is a reference of Shivalik ranges, there is Vindhya, there is Sahyadri, there is Himalaya. The whole geography is available in only one context of Vagbhata. So therefore, we can bring about we can explore these aspects in our Samhitas. We can bring about mathematics, statistics. Our expert here is Dr. Shanay sir. If you allow him to speak, he will bring you the whole statistical methods of present day and show it in Charaka Samhita. Now, we can develop Ayurveda calendar. I will end with this small information. Present day, we have a calendar that starts from January. If you look into September is 11th month, or rather the 9th month. If you look into the meaning of Sept should say go to 7, right? Sept should be 7, but it is 9. October, it should be 8, it has become 10. November, it should be 9, it has become 11. December, it should be 10, it has become 12. Now, is there anything significant here? Of course, even the followers of Gregorian calendar were also following our own Chaitra Vaishakha in the past. Because of this person whom by name Julius Caesar, it's a Roman calendar actually. So he wanted to assign some importance to some person. So he changed the whole calendar, and we have the calendar which starts from January, where the 7th month has become 9th. So therefore, the calendar that was there in Ayurveda was based on the Rutu concept of Rutucharya, which was apt, which was more correct. And they did manipulate, and we are forced to follow that calendar. Even that calendar, the lunar calendar, which has got the 280 days, is more apt for us medically, because even when we talk about the conception, we talk about 10 month, and 10 month based on lunar calendar, it is 280 days. Whereas from the Gregorian calendar, it becomes 9 months and 7 days. So such are the various aspects. So I just want to make a mention that in the past, this is a picture of something that happened in the region of Mysuru. When the Britishers invaded the Tipu Sultan, there was a war, and Tipu Sultan cut the nose of the British warriors, and the warriors were Of course, they were fighting for the British, but they were the Maratha people. And the warrior went back with a cut nose, and somewhere nearer in the place Pune, his nose reconstruction was done, and it was followed based on Sushruta's method. And the Britishers were surprised to see this, and they came particularly from the London back to India and learned how did this nose reconstruction was done. Two doctors came and learned this, and they went back and reproduced the same procedure in London. And thereafter, they published an article in the Gentleman's Magazine of London in 1794, and they titled it as Indian Nose. That was a trigger point for whole of the Britishers to learn Sushruta Samhita. From there, they learned Sushruta Samhita, modified all our surgical instruments, and the surgery grew at the expense of Ayurveda. So this has happened in the past. And there is another possibility of this. With due regard to Dr. M.S. Valiathan, who has done great work, contributed to the understanding of Ayurveda. But however, these books, which are priced very high, written by Dr. Valiathan, are being read extensively by the followers of modern medical science. And it is, and you know, there is a the drawback with the modern medical science. They are unable to cope up with the molecular theories, and therefore they are coming up with something called a systems biology. And therefore, the days when they start researching on our topics are not far. So it is time for us to awaken and start working on literary research in this field of Ayurveda. So with these inputs, of course, it was an exhaustive presentation, but it was essential because not everyone will be liking the same type of topics. So I had thought of giving a wide array of topics. So with these inputs, I end my speech thanking the organizers and everyone for patient hearing. So thank you. I stop talking. If there are any questions, I'm here to take them.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable knowledge with our participants. Indeed, literary research forms the grounds for all the forms of research, and how our participants were impressed, that is evident in our chat box as well. We're sure that our inquisitive participants have gained a lot of understanding through your session. As they say, curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. And we encourage the curiosities of our participants by trying to find an answer to it. For the same, I would like to call Dr. Shruti Pandey for moderating the questionnaire session. Dr. Shruti Pandey is JR in PG Department of Rashas in Bheshaj Kalpana at State Ayurvedic College and Hospital, Lucknow. Over to you, Dr. Shruti.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity for being the part of this prestigious e-webinar. Good evening to all the eminent speakers of the day, to all the organizing members of the Vishwa Ayurveda Parishad e-webinar, and all the other participants. Somewhere I have read that germs and pearls may vanish away, but knowledge acquired will never decay. This is very true because thank you, sir, for this valuable knowledge that we have learned from you, and I believe that it's going to be very helpful for all of us throughout the life. So now it's time to open up the bundles of curiosity and doubts that all our participants have asked. Although, sir, you have explained the topic very well and completely. So I don't think there is any doubts left, but still where there is curiosity, there is research. So coming towards the first question has been asked by Nisha Rana. She said that she want to carry a critical study on the role of Hetu in Samprapti Nirmana in view of Charak Nidan. Reference chapter 8, Shlok 24. She wants you to guide how she should proceed in this area.
So she wants to do the Nidana Pariksha. Fine. Okay. So it's see, there are 3 or 4 dimensions for this. First thing is we have to enlist all the Nidanas that are mentioned in our Samhitas, be it Lagutrayi or Brahatrayi or Sangraha Grantha. The Nidanas are to be enlisted, and that has to be carefully, critically analyzed. At this point of time, it has to be remembered that if I'm talking about a Nidana of Jwara, my duty is not only to see the Jwara Chikitsa or Jwara Nidana Adhyaya, but I have to read the other relevant part of the Samhita. Just for example, if you see the Jala context of Bhagavata, the what river coming from the particular river is said to be Durnamakrit. That is, it's the cause of Harsha, right? So particularly my gut feeling that those who are working on Nidana aspect are present day are focusing only on the Nidana mentioned in that chapter. They are ignoring the Nidanas mentioned elsewhere in the Samhitas. So as a researcher, it is our duty to bring all those Nidanas which are mentioned at different contexts in the Samhitas and make a compilation of all possible Nidanas, right? So that is one thing. Then based on the disease that we can bring about categorization of these Nidanas as Sannikrishta, Viprakrishta, as and then in the present day scenario, what can be the other contributing Nidanas? So that can be done. For this, they have to read not just Ayurveda literature. For this, they have to read the literature of probable mimicking modern diseases also, from where they can get the leads. And thereafter, they can get the full list of etiological factors. Based on the etiological factors, the dosha need to be assessed, and based on the dosha, the dosha involvement, the treatment also can be carried out. So this is what I want to say as far as profiling of Nidana is concerned. It's a big work, challenging work, but someone has to do it. So it's a responsibility should be taken.
Thank you, sir. Another question has been asked by Dr. Anshu Kumar. He wants you to explain the slide related to positioning of literary research, if possible, because in the beginning you were not so audible due to poor connection or interrupted audio.
No, should I share the screen, or should I show that research onion again?
I think it will be given later on.
Okay, so I just want to say, see, in research, we come across with so many technical terminologies. We really fail to understand which gets connected where. That is the reason why that research onion is created, where at the outermost layer, we have the research philosophies. What really is that I am doing? Research philosophy means it is that I want to gain knowledge. I want to give knowledge, right? It is the, I have a life. I have Atma, and the Atma has got Jnana as an Adhikarana, right? So therefore, that component is positioned outside. So what you should do after that? It can be in two forms. Either it will be deductive or inductive. I can do an exploratory kind of work, or I can take small topic and elaborate it, right? I can do that, or I can do an inductive work or deductive work. For this, there will be some strategies and methods, and centermost is data connection. So with reference to literary research, it will be a data collection which can happen longitudinally or cross-sectionally, which is an exploratory archival research, right? So here we're not giving one drug and seeing its effect. We are opening up the possibilities of various hypotheses for many works.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Anshu might have got the answer. Moving towards the next question, it has been asked by Dr. Shivraj. We want to know that is there any established parameter or scale for assessment of surgical wound healing? Usually we get parameters for infected wound assessment like Ben-Jensen parameter, but no such parameter for surgical wound healing. Moreover, there are few publications related to histopathological assessment, but not clinical objective parameters are available.
Okay, for this question, I don't have the direct answer. I can tell only guide him that you should go to some some databases, PubMed, etc., where such kinds, you use these keywords and search it. I don't have a direct answer that there is such and such, sorry to say. So you can go do the literature research itself.
Thank you, sir. Another question has been asked by Dr. Chinmay. She wants to know that, is there anything we can do to analyze the Ojha with Madhumeha to throw a light to know the real concept behind Ojas? Which acharyas really meant? If we want to study this, do we go by clinical or fundamental research?
Fine. So this is exactly specifically the reason why the Madhumeha becomes asadhya, because every time in the samprapti of Madhumeha, we find the Oja and we see that Oja is eliminated through the urine, and that's why when Oja, which is our bala, which is immunity, our body becomes immunocompromised, and therefore the disease is also becoming yapya and thereafter the asadhya. However, with reference to this, why it is happening is to be understood. There is a faulty Dhattvagni Vyapara that is happening. And if we can assess and exactly check the Dhattvagni, because it is, Dhattvagni management is not that easy. Because in such conditions, we have Agni Vruddhi at the Pachakagni level and Dhatu Agni Mande at the level of Dhatus. So balancing and doing this activity, maybe once you correct your Dhattvagnis, there will be a possibility of Oja being formed again, and the restoration of Oja, if it happens, then it is possible to stop the disease at that level itself. However, in this context itself, I have to mention that our acharyas were very foreseen about all these things. If you look into the concept of Ojas, they talk about two types of sara. One is Madhu Sara, Madhurupi Sara, and the other one is Ghritarupi Sara. This Ojas is in essence in two forms. One is like Madhu, how the Madhu are formed. The nectar from different flowers are collected and Madhu is formed. How the Ghrita is formed. The Kshira is subjected to so many processing, and thereafter we have an essence. And the essence of 7 dhatus in the form of Ghritarupi Sara, which then after becomes Madhurupi Sara, we have this Ojas, which is our bala. If we protect the Ojas, then we have the life. And otherwise, we have to end our life pretty quickly in the form of Ojas, Srava, Kshaya, Visramsa, Vyapat, etc. So that is a challenge that our Samhitakaras also have observed it. Even I want to mention that when they say it is treatable in 1 year, it is of the opinion that probably they would have assessed the pre-diabetic condition itself bit earlier, because our ancestors had got a very powerful observation capacity. Observation capacity that we have is very narrow. They observed so many things so meticulously, and therefore we have Dantadina Maladhyatvam as or rather the Purva Rupa of our Samhitas are actually the Upadrava of the modern medical science diabetes, right? So that's how it has to be understood. That's how, of course, it's not an easy task to stop the loss of Oja and arrest the progress of Madhumeha, but it is not impossible. Next question, please.
The next question has been asked by Dr. Satyapriya Naik. There's the question. She wants to know if what will be the methodology for literary research on Panchkarma methodology as based on 12 questions of Kalpana Siddhi Adhyaya of Charak Samhita.
No, for this, to have a methodology, we have to have a proper research question, right? So here, if the research question is clear, then we can think about methodologies. To have exploratory type of research on this 12 questions If you want to do, then you can go into the translation. You can do on Padartha Jnana. You can go on the commentary, commentators. You can go on the various commentators inspired Charkopaskara. The Gangadhara commentaries are not fully explored on this topic also. So there is a scope of conducting literary research on this particular chapter also, or particular these questions also.
Thank you, sir. Now the last question. It has been asked by Dr. Karishma Varlani, and she wanted to explain what are the factors that causes Abadha Med.
Factors that causes?
Abadha Med.
Abadha Meda.
Yeah.
Abadha Meda, see, Meda is a component of the body, right? It is a normal phenomenon that we have Baddha and Abadha as the two form of Meda. If there is Dushti, if there is Vikriti, then that Abadha Meda may be increased, which we call it as the hyperlipidemia, right? That's how the high amount of cholesterol is generated, and that may lead to the atherosclerotic plaque. If they start blocking, then there is incidence of stroke, etc. And this you can get the leads, particularly from the Chakrapani and the Dalhana commentary on two things. One is Dhamani Pratichaya, mentioned in the Nidana, rather Nanatmaja Vyadhi context of Charakasamhita Sutrasthana. And the other one is the Vata Vyadhi, where Siragata Vata is another context where you have to look into. From there, two references, you can get a very good lead to understand this concept.
Okay, thank you, sir. If you allow, there is one more question.
Yes, please.
Asked by Dr. Nisha Gupta. She wants you to tell about the reference of statistics in Ayurveda.
Reference of statistics in Ayurveda is scattered throughout Ayurveda. See, one of the Paradi Guna is Sankhya, right? Sankhya is, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sankhya Shastra is statistics. Sankhya is one among the Paradiguna. How it is defined by Acharya Charaka? Sankhya Syad Ganitam. Sankhya is Ganita. From here, you have different possibilities. For example, just to quote some examples, in statistics, we talk about range, right? You know, range. So what is this range? In defining health, our acharyas have used it. When swastha is defined, Chakrapani says sushtuhu nirvikaratvena avatisthati. The minimum thing that is required is you should be free from disease. And if you look into Sushruta's definition, samadosha samagnishta samadhatu malakriyaha prasannatmindriya manaha swastha ityavidiyat. So that is the highest level. So we have two different parameters. One is the highest possible level, and the second one is the minimum that is required is a range. It's a statistical tool. It's a statistical aspect. The way you look at the thing will give you the answers. I can quote some more examples like this. For example, you may be aware of something called as inclusion and exclusion criteria in research, right? Statistics also talks about the same. In your Padartha Vijnana, you would have learned something called as Annavaya Vyapti, Vetireka Vyapti, right? Annavaya Vyapti is talking about all that is inclusive, all that is required that I include is Annavaya Vyapti, and all that I keep aside is Vetireka. So that's how the statistics are applied. And you can, even when we talk about the application of the test of significance, we have two types of test of possibilities. One is descriptive statistics and the other one is inferential. Descriptive and inferential. What Acharya Charaka says, if you have thoroughly read your Aptopadesha, you need only two things. One is Pratyaksha and the other one is Anumana. So like that, there is an article, if she or he wants any details, which was published from our own Mysore Ayurveda College. I'll share if that is required. Likewise, there are many things. It just depends on the way the angle from which we see the things.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's the end of Q&A session. And thank you again for
Thank you again for patiently hearing my. It was a
Thanks a
rather
lot.
comprehensive and a bit elaborative session. Thank you for patient hearing. Thank you again, Surendra sir, for inviting me and giving me this platform. It was nice having. In fact, first time I'm talking on a platform of Uttar Pradesh. Thank you so much.